My name is Scott Lawson, certified business coach with Action Coach of Coastal Bend in South Texas. I'll be your host today for the Business Spotlight. I'm very excited to have our special guest, Thomas Andrews, on our show. Thomas is the owner of Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee, San Antonio. Today, we're going to talk to Thomas about his business, his journey to business ownership, some challenges, some successes. We'll have him share what it's really like to own and operate a business as an entrepreneur. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe so you get notifications when we publish new content. Well, Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, and looking forward to having this conversation.
Me too. I've been looking forward to it for a while, and we appreciate you coming on. I might just start things off, Thomas, by asking you how your journey started.
Well, let me just go ahead and say that I swore I would never be an entrepreneur.
Oh,
My dad was a full-time entrepreneur. He was in carpentry at the
I
beginning of his
see.
life, and then he got into he actually invented a nutcracker, got a patent on it, and then sold them at craft shows all over the southeast of the United States for this whole second half of his life. Um, so I got to travel along selling these things uh, starting in middle school up until I went off to college. And just the volatility of owning a business was something I didn't foresee myself doing.
I see.
My background is scientific research. I have worked in chemical engineering labs and biomedical labs. And then recently, I have been a high school teacher for the last 6 years um, while owning a coffee shop.
Oh, that's quite a background. So let's talk about that coffee shop. I'd like to hear about the business. Describe it to us.
Yeah, so Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. We have one location in San Antonio. Um, Mudslingers, the corporation, is kind of like a consultant model where uh, you're not part of a franchise system, but they have all the tools that you need for owning a coffee shop. Now, let me go ahead and say my wife and I did not start Mudslingers. It was started by my in-laws back in 2017. My father-in-law worked in restaurants his whole life. And so Mudslingers was kind of his passion project where he had always wanted to own his own business. And so they started this coffee shop in 2017 and ran it up until we took over in 2022. Now, in 2021, unfortunately, he passed away.
Oh,
And my mother-in-law had been part of the business the whole time, but not necessarily the background for running a business. And
mhm.
so my wife and I made the decision to take over ownership. So ever since early 2022, we have run and operated the coffee shop. So as a business, we do everything that you would think a Dutch Brothers or a Starbucks does, all the same types of drinks and foods. Uh, we I was going to say it's drive-through only, so we have no seating, indoor seating,
Mhm. Right,
which does reduce the complexity of this type of operation.
right.
Um, it's a lot of coffee making.
And what is your personal role in the business, Thomas?
So as the owner, I wear a bunch of different hats. Uh, During the middle of the pandemic, I actually worked for my in-laws as a barista because they were having a hard time getting employees. So
Hmm.
I have done the barista gig, but as the owner, I rarely am making drinks. Most of
Uh-huh.
what I do involves hiring new employees, training new employees, all of the business side, running numbers, doing the bookkeeping, fixing equipment, everything that happens outside of the opening hours of the shop.
Okay. A lot of working on the business, not in the business.
Yeah, so I'm in a fortunate position. It wasn't always that way, but right now we have two managers that can handle the day-to-day operations. So
Mhm.
scheduling, working on a shift, quality control during the day. So it does allow me to have a little bit more flexibility
Mhm.
to like plan for the future. But that was not always the case when we first took over.
Mhm.
We were in there all the time trying to figure out what it takes to actually run a business. So
Mhm.
it's been a journey.
It is so key to be able to have dependable people working for you that you can rely on to do a lot of those things. That's wonderful. So how about challenges, mistakes maybe along the way, things that other business owners might be able to learn from?
Oh, yeah. So that was one of the things I was so excited about being on this podcast, because I wish that there was somebody that could have like held my hand at the beginning of taking over and been like, here are the steps, follow these steps, and then
Right.
you'll be okay. Because what my personal experience was, you get handed the keys, or you get the keys, and then there's all these questions and no black or white answers. It's all
Hmm.
gray. Uh, so um, it took a while to feel out, because we were taking over for my in-laws. They had been running it for 5 years before we took over, and so they had some patterns of uh, day-to-day operations that we were inheriting versus starting from scratch on our own. And so some of the managerial styles that the baristas, the staff, were used to working with were much different than what I had in mind. And I was very hesitant about changing the way things operated for probably too long. I
Hmm.
didn't make any major changes to the operations for at least nine months, maybe a year after taking over.
Hmm.
So some of the mistakes, some of the challenges that we've had, the restaurant industry in general is pretty tight margins, and so the way I view it now, it's a math problem. You
Hmm.
have your labor, you have your cost of goods, COGS, and you have your revenue, and you have your utilities. Uh,
Hmm.
and when we took over, like I conceptually I understood the numbers, but I was not prepared for the reality of that. Um, and it was just it was kind of it took my breath away when I realized how hard it was compared to how hard I thought it was going to be. Because I had
Right.
managed projects, I've managed $1 million projects before doing this, um, but it's a little bit different when you have 10 to 15 people looking at you for all the answers, and you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Like a lot of business owners, learning the hard way, wearing lots of hats, like you said, and having to go through unfortunately, sometimes it's the mistakes, or sometimes it's the negatives that we learn the most from. So, yep, yep, pretty typical. How about aspiration? If you think into the future, maybe 5 years, what do you think the Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee San Antonio, or whatever else might be involved in it, would look like? What do you expect? What are you driving toward?
So, um, if you catch me on any given day, my plans may change, because the ride of being an entrepreneur is not, it's not a straight flat road. It's a lot of curves and a lot of bumps. Um, I have gone all the way the spectrum from opening all the locations that I possibly can across San Antonio and Central Texas, to um, changing the name, franchising it, because right
Hmm.
now, Mudslingers, there are multiple Mudslingers around the world, but they're not connected. They're all individual operating locations. But what if we wanted to actually take what we have that's working and multiply that? Could we do that? Or if so, right now we have some managers and we have some baristas. Like their passion in life, their goal is to own a coffee shop. What would it look like to transition to
I
have
see.
an exit? Um,
Hmm.
so there are a lot of a lot of potentials, and we're my wife and I, we talk about it all the time, about what 5 years will look like.
Mhm.
And it's just, it could go a bunch of different ways.
Each time you talk about it, you come to a different conclusion. Is that it?
Uh, uh Not necessarily like it's kind of like what do we want to define as success and what does that look like for our
Okay.
family? And so um it's like how do we want to get where we want to be?
Let's talk about that a little bit. When you think about success, is there a person that comes to mind? How do you describe success? If there's somebody who you think of as successful, why is that? What is success to you?
So for this, like, the first person was my father-in-law. Um, he started out in the restaurants without a college degree, and he worked hard. And as far as I could tell, everywhere he went, he made improvements around him.
Mm,
And he ultimately, at the top of his career, was a vice president for like a region for a major brand of restaurant franchises. And after that, he started Mudslingers not necessarily as like a money making entity. He viewed it as a mission for him, like having a business, having employees, giving employees a chance to earn a honest living while ministering to them. He was very strong in the church, and he thought he was just being like a spiritual mentor for the people around him, being a good
mhm.
example, being a role model for the community. And it's kind of like you can't live a more virtuous life than that.
Right, right. That's great. When you think about you and mudslingers as opposed to competition, others in the area, what do you think differentiates mudslingers from others?
So the difference from being part of a franchise to owning your own location, your independent location, and it took me a while to really like uh, put on that suit of armor, was that an independent location can be fast, it can be flexible, you can
Oh,
do quirky things that a franchise cannot do. And in
hmm.
fact, when you're competing in a market, like, your business relies on you coming up with new things to capture the
Hmm.
community's attention. And so we have done stuff like we're in San Antonio. There's a major university, UTSA. We had a deal with the quarterback of the football team where he got his own special drink, and then every time, every it was a game day, we would donate money to the university anytime fans would buy his special drink.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
it allows us to really like be way more creative than a lot of other coffee shops can be. We have a pickle juice energy drink that I thought when the baristas brought it to me was going to be like, it was just like, who would ever buy this? And I ended up having to go out to the grocery store. Like, we bought a gallon of pickle juice, and it's like, fine, we'll do the energy drink with pickle juice. We'll see how it works. And then over the course of the next 3 weeks, I had to buy like 15 gallons of pickle juice because
Hmm.
there was this untapped uh, market that had just been longing for a pickle juice drink that I had no idea. And a regular franchise, they can't move that fast. They can't be that spontaneous. And if it would have busted, it would have been fine. We could just try something the next week. But it really it lets me be a little bit more creative than being part of a bigger corporation.
Great. That's a good example. I want to ask about another thing. I've asked you to go forward in time, what it looks like 5 years from now. Let's go back in time to when you first took over the business. That was 2021, maybe 2022, I
Yeah,
guess.
the end of
2022.
2021, 2022.
If you could go back to that point, what would you do different?
Uh, First, let me just say, for all the entrepreneurs out there, I probably would have been more honest with my spouse about the things that were stressing me out and the thing that was stressing out my wife, because it's just a lot of moving parts, right? When you take over a business, or right when you start a business, um, there's a lot of things going on, and I didn't necessarily want to bother her with stuff I was having to handle. Um, And it kind of like kept building and kept building until we had to have like a really serious conversation about what our lives were looking like. And after we had that conversation, and it's like, look, I know most of the time I look like I'm not stressed out, but in the back of my mind, running a business, there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of people depending on you. uh Here are some things that I'm worried about that you may not understand that are going on. And after we had that conversation, it really like it's like a pressure relief was let off, and
Mm,
now we could start honestly communicating. So that would have been the biggest thing that if I could go back, I would change. Um,
great.
some getting educated in business would have helped. So I had a background in project management.
Hmm.
I have led teams before. I had handled big budgets, and so that didn't necessarily scare me. But businesses have their own vocabulary that I was not versed in,
Hmm.
and so it slowed down a lot of communications for how I was handling collaborations or even financing. I didn't know what COGS meant, cost of goods
Hmm.
sold. So for a
Hmm.
restaurant, that's one of your three biggest expenses. How much, well, like if you sell a cup of coffee, how much does the cup cost? How much does the coffee beans cost? How much does your sleeve cost? How much does your lid cost? Um, we were operating just winging it, literally feeling an all of emotion based on how the coffee shop had been running the previous 5 years, which was fine because my father-in-law had been running businesses for 40 years. And so he just instinctively knew roughly where to keep stuff. I just I didn't think about how much more detail I needed to go into.
Hmm.
But if you're out there listening to this podcast and you're thinking about starting your own business, um, I know that I spent a lot of time doing stuff that made me feel like I was being productive. So making sure our social media was up and running, getting some posts. What is our logos looking like? Do we have cool T-shirts? Do we have cool baseball hats? It feels like I was doing a lot of stuff, but the thing that I needed to do that made the biggest impact on our business was sitting down, writing down what are called recipe cards for all of our drinks. So for every
Hmm.
ingredient we use, how much does that cost? Where do we get it from? That way, for pricing, I knew exactly what our profits were going to be, what our costs were going to be, and it like revolutionized the way that we could price stuff and predict what our sales and revenue and profits were going to be month to month. Um,
Great. Very good advice. That's and I know sometimes the numbers might seem a little bit boring to business owners, but they are key. They are so important.
yeah.
It's I mean it's the difference between a business succeeding and not succeeding in a lot of cases. So
So the other thing I was going to say is that in the back of my mind, you read articles and you're like, there are these products out and about that go viral, and the owners of that product, they start making millions of dollars overnight. And in my mind, I was like, I was wanting this golden ticket or this viral moment to like really skyrocket our business, and make it um, easy. I wanted the easy button. It turns out that there are no easy buttons most of the time.
mhm.
The success of a business comes from consistent smart moves that build up over time.
Thomas, thank you for sharing your story. This has been interesting, and I hope that the audience finds this informative and valuable. This is the Business Spotlight series with Scott Lawson from Action Coach of Coastal Bend and Thomas Andrews of Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee, San Antonio. Please be sure to like and subscribe so you can continue to get great content. Thank you for watching or listening today. Bye for now. Let's go. Let's grow.